Welcome. My guest today here at Fuel for Freedom is Jack Scharr. He's an entrepreneur business owner, and Jack's company is the largest publisher of commemorative art in the world. He has such an interesting story to tell. We've broken it down into 3 parts. And the first part is a narrative about Lady Liberty in New York's harbor, and it leads in to how he became associated with the United States Olympic Committee and the founder of Fine Arts Limited. Jack, we're really anxious to hear what you have to say today.
Well, it's an interesting story, Tony. We were working with an artist in St. Louis, Don Wiegand, and having his sculptures cast in San Diego and College of the Desert out in the California area. And Bill Cole, head of the foundry, asked if I would be interested in working on a project for the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. A man he worked with in California, Andy Nelson, who had a summer home in California, was working on a project to develop all the major ethnic groups that came through Ellis Island. So I said, sure, that sounds fine. He said, well, you'll have to fly to New York and meet Andy in Loveladies, New Jersey, which I did. So we flew to New York and got together with Andy. He showed me the program he had designed. It was bas-reliefs, starting with the Statue of Liberty, the upper torso of the Statue of Liberty, and then going to each of the major ethnic groups that came through Ellis Island, cast in bronze. And so I liked it. I thought it was a great project. And Andy said, well, if you want to do it, let's go into New York and talk with Stephen Briganti, head of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. So we did. We drove into New York and got together with Ed Dooley and Stephen Briganti and showed them the project, told them what we wanted to do. And they liked it. They said, sounds great, let's do it. And Andy said, well, wait, Jack and I are going to have lunch. We'll be back in a few minutes. So we came back, and at lunch, Andy said to me, I don't want to do it. Jack, you do it. I'll help, but I don't want to do it. And so I said, okay. So he said, well, what are you going to call your company? Because I really didn't even have a company at that point. I was working with Don, and we were casting things under the name of Wiegand Studios. So I said, Fine Art Limited. So Andy at lunch drew a logo of an F and an A that we're still using, that became the logo for Fine Art Limited. We went back to meet with Briganti, signed the contract, and began the project, began commissioning artists to do each of the major ethnic groups for Ellis Island. And we used an artist of that ethnic background. At first we thought it might not work, but let's try it. Well, it worked, and we found an artist for each of those categories, including a Russian artist. We had a problem with finding a Russian artist. We found a Russian artist that had worked at the Linen Mint in Moscow and was living in California. We flew out there and commissioned him to do the Russian bas-relief. He said, I love the Statue of Liberty so much, I'll do it for nothing. Well, we didn't let him do it for nothing. But that's how enthusiastic most of the artists were of doing this project. So we did a total of 15 reliefs, starting with the Statue of Liberty and then going through the German, French, Irish, all the different major groups that came through Ellis Island, and worked traveling all over the country to meet with a prominent artist of that ethnic background to do it. And it worked out very well. Everybody was happy, and we moved forward with it. From there, John Krimsky, Secretary General of the United States Olympic Committee, saw the project, saw what we had done for the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. and asked if we would be interested in doing the '88 Olympic Games. So I was excited about doing it. So we moved forward and did the 1988 Olympic Games for the United States Olympic Committee, commissioning artists to represent the different images that they could create to commemorate the Games. The whole project was to commemorate the Olympics. And the Olympic poster has always become a very important part of the Olympics. There is one poster in the Olympic Games chosen for every Games. We commissioned several posters. One is chosen to represent the Games. And our company, throughout the years, has two posters that have become the official posters of the Olympic Games. I think no other company has done two, but so it's been an exciting process of moving forward with the Olympics.
Two official Olympic posters representing Olympic athletes. That's amazing. The backstory of these projects is interesting as well. Of course, it happened over a long period of time, and it gives us all a chance to kind of walk through this with you and some of these memories, which are really fascinating. You've whet our appetite in just these last few minutes, and we want to hear a lot more. So there had to be some challenges and struggles, and we'd like you to share some of those. When we come back, share some of that with us and let us just ride with you through these memories.
Knowing how to turn knowledge into wisdom is brain fuel. And you can pour that fuel into your head with the help of Brain Pathways. With the complete Brain Pathways assessment, you will uncover even more parts of your mind. Go to aimyoursights.com/brain to find out what you were created to do. You'll become wiser now rather than later.
Is there a prominent story that sticks out in your mind?
Well, Tony, you asked about the struggles that occur when you're doing art for a specific project or any specific project, whatever you're doing. Difficulties always arise. And we did run into many difficulties throughout the process of what we've done with the Olympics, with other projects that we've done. There's always struggles. There's always the artist that doesn't get finished on time. For instance, Marcel Salinas, an artist that worked with Picasso. I commissioned him to do an image coming from, this is going back to the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation, coming from Ellis Island to New York. There was a door at the end of Ellis Island that said push to New York. People got on boats and came across into New York. And Marcel was very famous for doing boats. So I wanted him to do boats. Well, 2 years went by. The project was over. And he called me up and he said, "Jack, I've finished the project. Do you want to see it?" And I said, "Of course," knowing that there's nothing I could do with it. It's finished. The project's over. And so I went to New York, met with Marcel, and he showed me a project of paintings of immigrants. He was supposed to do boats. He did immigrants. And he did 24 different paintings of a German immigrant, a Russian immigrant, different immigrants. So I said, "Well, Marcel, they're wonderful. What about the boats?" And he said to me, "Jack, I didn't have time to do the boats. I was doing the paintings of the immigrants." And, you know, what are you going to say? I didn't ask you to do immigrants. I asked you to do the boats leaving Ellis Island. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that can happen. And you never know where you're going with artists. And it goes on, stories on top of stories. I guess the most prominent story, I would say, is we were trying to finish up the project for Carnegie Hall. For Carnegie Hall, they asked us to do a project for the 100th anniversary of Carnegie Hall. And we did Liechtenstein and Rauschenberg and Larry Rivers and Ed Ruscha, Joan Mitchell. We did all these different top artists. And I would submit them to the head of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation. They would tell me they either approve it or not approve it. With these guys, when you're dealing with this caliber of artist, you don't really not approve something, you accept it. So Larry Rivers did a painting of Isaac Stern on top of Carnegie Hall playing the violin. Well, we sent it to, it was probably the most Carnegie Hall related image that we had done with all these artists. So I sent it to Carnegie Hall thinking, wow, this one's going to be a piece of cake. And they called back and said, Mr. Stern does not want to be in the image. Tell Larry to take it out. Well, we contact Larry Rivers. He said, you asked me to do an image for Carnegie Hall. I did it. I'm not changing anything. So we went back to Carnegie Hall and they said, he has to change it. Isaac Stern does not want to be in the image. So I go back to Larry Rivers again and he said, I'm not going to change it. Forget it. And if you don't figure out how to use it, I'm going to call up Lichtenstein and Rauschenberg and they'll pull their images too. And we were already notified by them, you must work this out with Larry Rivers. And so we went back to Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall went to Isaac Stern, and Isaac Stern knew Larry Rivers, and he called Larry Rivers. And Rivers said, no, I'm not changing it. I did it, it's done, forget it. So what he had done, Larry Rivers works in a cutout fashion. He does large paintings. This was a 40 by 60 inch painting. And in foam core, he cuts out the images and then paints them. So it's a difficult thing to change. I mean, we can see why Larry Rivers didn't want to change, and Carnegie Hall had given him a picture of Isaac Stern playing the violin. So now I'm negotiating with Larry Rivers. Well, how do we work this out? Because he's determined not to do it. Finally, his agent said to me, if you buy the painting of Larry Rivers, he might consider doing a second painting. So it was a very expensive painting. So I agreed to buy it, but I said, can we change the painting in the print? So the original painting could be changed as we went into serography. And so Larry Rivers agreed finally, if I bought the original painting, he would do sketches to remove Isaac Stern from the top of the painting and go into other areas. He would do another violinist up there, nondescript, no specific person, and we would use that for the print for Carnegie Hall. So we all agreed to it. So I get the sketches in to fit on the original to start the serography, and Larry Rivers had painted two faces on the image to replace Isaac Stern. And one of the face was just a violinist, and the other face, just kind of looking out at the camera, was Larry Rivers. He put himself in the image just to protest that he didn't want to make the change, but had agreed to. So anyway, we got through with the project. Lichtenstein, Rauschenberg were back on board. Everything was fine, and we moved forward with the project. But that's the kind of thing that can happen, and you have to be on your feet to figure out how to make the adaptation so that the project works.
What an incredible story, unique and great example of challenges. It can apply to any project. Be ready to manage what seems unimaginable. And problems arise regardless of tasks or project. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's always difficulties in doing something.
Well, that completes part one of our interview with Jack. And in part two, we're going to go back to the Olympics. Jack, I imagine there are some fun little known facts we can learn about these extraordinary people who compete for gold medals in the sports that they do so well. We'll be right back.